Joining us right now via Zoom chat is Father Vincent Lampert. He is a priest in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis and an exorcist, and we're very grateful for your time this morning, Father. Thank you for being on.
Yes, it's good to be with you this morning.
But I want to jump into your work as an exorcist because I think it's one of those topics where most lay folk get our information from some of the greatest sources in Hollywood about the devil, the diabolic, and most people are just simply afraid to educate themselves on the topic. And I find that rather curious because once I personally heard from Exorcist and even like Adam Bly, a demonologist, for instance, I felt empowered by the information and I grew in confidence in our faith versus more scared or nervous or what have you. So I would like to start by saying, what are some of the biggest myths in your career as an exorcist that you've had to debunk?
Well, the first thing I would say is that one of the reasons why I am public about the ministry that I do is to help educate people and to debunk a lot of the myths that are out there. Many exorcists that are appointed may opt to remain anonymous, but I've always felt that it's important today to help educate people because a lot of people today have a mentality that dualism, that somehow God and the devil are on the same playing field and they're kind of equal in their power. And certainly people need to realize that the devil is still a creature, and there's no way that a creature can be elevated to the same level as God, our creator. So that's one of the main things that people need to realize is that once we fully understand who the devil is and what he's capable of and his limitations, then we come to realize that the devil is nothing to fear.
That's a great point. I wonder if people even realize that's what they're doing. Like they're saying and believing that, but they don't know that they think they know that they're saying and believing that they're sort of elevating the devil to a platform that he doesn't deserve or doesn't possess. So that's an excellent first one. What about more of the sort of the salacial details, sort of like the bombastic elements of demonic possession? Do you find that like people are overly fascinated with the spinning of the heads, levitation, frothing at the mouth stuff?
That's usually the only stuff that people want to hear about. You know, the manifestations of the demonic always attract people's attention. There's a joke amongst exorcists that if you're going to give a talk about Jesus, about 20 people are going to show up. But if you're going to talk about the devil, 200 people are going to show up. We're always fascinated by the manifestations of the devil, the spinning heads, the levitation, eyes rolled in the back of the head, foaming at the mouth. These are all things that I've seen over the years. But then, at some point, you just realize that these are all theatrics of the devil because the devil basically is saying, look at what I'm capable of doing. So he wants to distract people away from the power of God that God wants to enact in people's lives. So as an exorcist, I'm not really focused on what the devil is doing. I want to stay focused on what God is doing to help bring relief into the life of somebody who is being afflicted by the evil one.
You know, Father, I was talking to my cousin the other day, and we were discussing the fact that she was saying, like, oh, they're not Catholic. My uncle is a former Catholic, and the rest of them are not Catholic at all. And my cousin was saying, yeah, my mom just bought some tarot cards, and she doesn't actually believe in it or anything. And my sister has some, and she kind of plays with them. And we went to New Orleans, and we were going to all those shops and buying the stuff. But that voodoo stuff, it's not really real, right? And could you please explain what's going on here? And even if you don't believe in it, like, what's the problem here?
Well, the main problem is that it's inherently evil. There are ties to the occult. And just because somebody may be using these things as a form of entertainment doesn't negate the fact that there's a demonic component to it. Oftentimes, people can open up an entry point for the demonic into their lives indirectly. They're doing things that they believe are fun and entertaining, but in reality, they open up people's lives to evil. Even St. Paul mentions the fact that Satan transforms himself into an angel of light, and he deceives many people. And there's a lot of people today that are being deceived by things of the occult, again, believing they're just fun and entertainment, but again, they are entry points for the demonic into someone's life.
And, right now, what's really popular is this social media platform called TikTok. and it's really popular among young people. And right now, all over TikTok is promoting of these healing crystals and using crystals and manifestations of like willing something through the universe. All these things are very, very popular on this social media platform targeting young people, especially children. And I think it was the Teen Vogue put an article about how to do magic with women's menstrual, and so the cycle. And so how do we respond to these situations, the crystals, the manifestations, all these things that are targeting our children, our young people?
Yeah, I don't think people realize that their involvement with all these things is violating the first commandment, that we should never have a substitute for God in our lives. And when people turn to the things of the occult, whether it's crystals, going to see a psychic or a medium, practicing magic, all of these things are condemned in the book of Deuteronomy in the Old Testament, because again, people are looking for a substitute for God. And unfortunately, the substitute that they're looking for is themselves. And that's the fall of humanity in the book of Genesis with Adam and Eve, when the serpent says to Eve, surely you will not die, you will become like God. And a lot of people today want to substitute themselves for God, and they use these things from the occult to try to convince themselves that they have powers and abilities.
Father Vincent Lampert is our guest. He is a priest in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. He's also an exorcist, and I believe you were brought into the ministry by your bishop in 2005. Is that correct?
Yes, I was appointed in 2005. The Archdiocese of Indianapolis has always had a stably appointed exorcist. Even when it fell out of practice in many dioceses after the Second Vatican Council, Indianapolis has always had one. So when I was appointed back in 2005, I became one of 12 stably appointed exorcists in the United States. Today, that number has grown to about 125.
In your time as an exorcist, what's been the most nerve-wracking situation you've ever been in this ministry?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that oftentimes when people contact me, they've already self-diagnosed, meaning they've gone on the internet, they've done their own research. So rarely are people contacting me saying, Father, there's something going on in my life. Can you help me figure out what it is? The majority of people already believe that they're possessed and they need an exorcism.
And that's been the most nerve-wracking or stressful component of your apostle, is just dealing with all. I mean, my wife would probably say that I'm possessed most of the time, so I think it's all relative. But I imagine that the rite of exorcism has a very systematic approach towards figuring out whether or not someone is experiencing something supernatural versus something more mundane.
Yes, I get about 2,000 calls and emails a year.
Wow.
From people all over the United States, even other parts of the world, who believe they're dealing with the demonic. So, I try to network with other exorcist priests throughout the world. I belong to the International Association of Exorcists. So if I'm contacted by somebody, from a different country, I'd reach out to a priest or a colleague that I know there. Here in the United States, I would reach out to other priests in other dioceses. But yeah, the biggest challenge is really trying to work with the volume of callers. But that tells me that faith is in decline in the lives of far too many people today.
Wow.
Because faith in God will lead us in one direction, and the lack of faith will lead us in another. And I think that the reason there's such a high volume of callers is that faith is no longer relevant in people's lives. And then when they encounter something they can't explain, they believe they need to talk to an exorcist.
I spoke to Adam Bly, I guess it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. I assume you're familiar with Adam Bly, the demonologist from Pennsylvania. And one of the things he said to me was this diabolical, this paranormal activity is on the rise in our society. Do you see that? Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. I always say that it's not that the devil has upped his game, but far too many people today are willing to play the devil's game. So you look at, again, people's involvement in the occult and in witchcraft and magic. You look at a lot of shows on television today. There's such a fascination with the devil, the occult, and those types of things, paranormal activity, ghost hunting, you name it, and people are just really fascinated. And the danger is because these things are inherently evil, that people can be opening up an entry point to the demonic in their lives. Because ultimately, if people are living out their faith, there's nothing to fear.
So is it substantially higher? I mean, he said it was like hockey stick charting the amount of activity, amount of exorcisms and the work that needs to be done to help these people. Is that accurate? Do you see it the same way? Hockey stick like chart growth?
Yeah, because when I was appointed back in 2005, I got maybe 1 or 2 callers a week. Right now, I'm getting 8 to 10 calls a day.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So what is your we have about 2 minutes before we go to a break, but is your day-to-day work now just being an exorcist now, or do you still do a lot of parish work?
I'm the pastor of 2 parishes in Brookville, Indiana, St. Michael the Archangel and St. Peter's. So I have 2 parishes as well as the Exorcist. So I do have somebody that helps me. I think having a sense of humor is a good thing. So the lady that's my helper that helps go through all the calls and emails, I call her my Exorcistant. Because I think when you deal with people that are, kind of on the fringe, so to speak, a good sense of humor is a good way to stay grounded.
Exorcist humor. I love that. That's great. I can only imagine the jokes when you guys get together for your conference. Father Vincent Lampert is our guest. He is a priest in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. He's also an exorcist. As you have been listening, we've been talking about that. We're about ready to go to a break here in just a moment. One of the last points you'll probably have about 30 seconds or so. The curiosity killed the cat. That's a thing, right? I mean, lay folks, we're not entitled to know all there is to know. And sometimes, because we think we ought to know, it can get us in trouble, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are parameters that we're called to live within. Obedience is one of the key words that needs to be tied to a life of faith. And certainly Adam and Eve were not obedient to God, and look what happened. So obedience is a key element that needs to be a part of all of us, all of our lives on our spiritual journey.
When people want to participate, or like when lay folks say, can I come hang out with you while you're in an exorcist session, or exorcism session rather, I mean, the devil can smell the weakness there, and then they do certain things to exploit that, do they not?
They do. The devil works on people's memories, imaginations. The devil can watch and observe us, kind of identify what our weaknesses might be, and then use those as to be entry points into our lives. So if people have a fascination with the occult, with ghost hunting, those types of things, people are actually giving the devil and his demons an entry point into their lives. And again, just because people think it's fun and entertaining doesn't negate the fact that, the devil is trying to use us. And people also need to realize that we can never use the devil. We might think that sometimes we have the upper hand when it comes to the demonic, when we're engaged in occult activities, like a psychic or a medium. The church would say that person does not have the power that they think they have. Either they've been duped by evil that's working through them, or they know it's the evil working through them and they go along with it because they want the notoriety, the attention, the money, or whatever it might be. So there is that danger where people might begin with a sense of curiosity, but then it leads to a relationship with the demonic, and then people's lives will begin to spiral downwards.
Father, I wanted to go back a little bit to what you had said a second ago about the fact that your diocese has had an exorcist perpetually, whereas a lot of places it kind of fell off. What is the belief in the spiritual world and in demonic and spiritual warfare among the clergy, the bishops, and the like? I'm thinking of specifically when the great scandal when the superior of the Jesuits came out saying that the devil wasn't real. And it makes me remember the quote of C.S. Lewis saying that the greatest trick the devil ever played was to convince people that he wasn't real. So what is the belief in the devil among clergy and bishops like today?
I think that opinion is varied, even though the church very clearly teaches that evil is personified in what we call the devil and his demons. It doesn't mean that everyone within the church actually accepts that belief. Even in 1972, when Pope Paul at a Wednesday audience spoke about the reality of the devil, I think his comments caught a lot of people off guard, thinking that somehow after the Second Vatican Council and going through the 1960s, that the church had left the devil behind, and that if evil did exist, it was nothing more than humanity's inhumane treatment of one another. But the church has always consistently taught from the very beginning that evil is personified in what we call the devil and his demons. But it is true that even within the church, even within the hierarchy, you will find a lot of people that simply reject that belief.
And how did that belief start to fall off? Because you said that it was after the Second Vatican Council. So what happened at that time period that caused belief in the demonic to plummet?
I think as we began to grow in our understanding and knowledge, our own intelligence, so to speak, that somehow we believe that we outgrew the need for the devil. So you look at here in the United States, in the Western world, we believe in a lot of psychology, and certainly that does need to be factored in. But just because psychology is being factored in doesn't mean that we reject a core belief that's been a part of Catholicism from the very beginning. As an exorcist, I've been able to travel to other parts of the world. When I was in South Africa, for example, a few years ago, there's a culture that readily accepts spiritual realities. But I think here in the West, we don't, because we believe that somehow we're in control of everything. So there must be some pill or medicine that people can take to get rid of that delusion that they're dealing with the demonic.
And that reminds me of, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about how, we can find good in everything because, God is good and God is true. So that means everything, there must be some nugget of good and truthfulness in all things. And so we should learn from the secular society and learn from these kind of things. And my point was, whenever he was referring back to like Aristotle, Plato, and that kind of thing. And I was like, the pre-Christian societies, there was something there because they're striving after reason in a way that they were unexposed to the Christianity. But we today in America and across the Western world are in a post-Christian society. We had Jesus, we had Christianity, and we rejected him. Does this factor into the reason why spirituality is on the fall and demonic activities seems to be on the rise?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because there's a difference between exorcisms performed in what I call the apostate world and the pagan world. So in a part of the world where someone may have never heard the good news of Jesus Christ, and if they're possessed, the exorcism is immediate and effective. Sometimes people will ask, well, why do exorcisms have to be repeated? Jesus commanded the demon to leave once and it departed, but why are they repeated in the Western world? And it goes on to what you just said. Christianity built Western civilization, but now we unfortunately have a lot of people who no longer believe. And people who have rejected the gospel, once they've heard it, it does seem that the demonic has a greater hold on them.
Father Vincent Lampert is our guest. We have about, 5 minutes or so left in our conversation with him. Father, I want to talk about the essence of what happens during an exorcism. I think one of the misunderstandings that I've personally encountered, not only in my life but in the life people I've talked to, is that there's a misunderstanding of how things work in the spiritual realm. There's an order, and it's very legalistic, is what I've been told. Can you talk about that?
It is very legalistic. So just as much as there is a hierarchy within the angelic world, there is a hierarchy within the demonic world. So demons still operate under certain parameters that God permits. For example, one time I was working with somebody who was possessed, and when the demon manifested, the demon told me that it did not have to leave because the person had invited the demon in. So the demon was making a claim on the life of the person because they had made a pact with the devil. But you could say that in an exorcism, the devil or his demons are commanded to return that which they have stolen, namely a person created in the image and likeness of God. We as humans can grow in holiness and virtue, and because we can grow in holiness and virtue, we can reject any connection with the demonic that we've made. The demons would try to convince us otherwise. But again, you look at many of the great saints of the church, they had some pretty storied past, but they were able to overcome their past sinfulness. I think of St. Augustine, for example, and then went on to be a great saint of the church.
Again, we're down to like 2.5 minutes or so. One is people just can't be possessed arbitrarily, correct? I mean, I think that's one of the fears is that the devil can just enter people at will and do whatever they want, and that's just not the case.
No, I mean, if that was the case, we would be living in a completely chaotic world. So demons, again, can only do that which God permits. And again, we do have free will, and if we use our free will in such a way as to create an entry point for the demonic, then the devil will certainly take advantage of that. But a demon cannot just arbitrarily jump into someone. People have asked me before during an exorcism, is there ever the danger that the demon will jump out of one person and into another? We should never give the devil more credit than he is due.
That's a powerful understanding, the trust in God in all things. What about all of the manifestations that seem very scary? The crazy voices we hear, the sounds and the levitations and all of those things. Should we have fear of all of that?
No, again, all those things are meant to be attention getters. You know, you think of a child throwing a temper tantrum, wants attention, and so the manifestations of the demon are really a temper tantrum because the demon wants to say, don't look at what God's trying to do here, look at what I'm capable of doing. Because the devil wants to instill fear, and if we give in to fear, then we lose our sense of hope. So again, you know, over the years, I've learned not to pay attention to the theatrics of the devil because I want to stay focused on the power of God. The human person is created in the image and likeness of God. And if we've made a connection with the demonic and we want to reach out to God, God will always take us by the hand.
Oh, down to just about 60 seconds. What about prayer? Should someone lay hands on someone else and pray over them and cast out demons?
Well, Pope Benedict, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, made it very clear in 1986 that the only ones that should be giving commands to demons are the priests that have been authorized to do that ministry by their local bishop. So again, exorcism is a liturgical rite within the Catholic Church, so there is a prescribed way for it to be done. Certainly, we can pray for other people. I would call that a supplicating exorcism, which is a prayer directed to God, and certainly we can pray to God for anyone that we believe that is afflicted.
Excellent. God bless you, Father Vincent Lampert. Thank you very much for your time today. We're very grateful to you and for your apostolate, your ministry to educate and inform us on this incredible topic. God bless you and have a great day. I would encourage our audience, if you know anybody who's got issues, call your local diocese. We'll be right back with more Catholic Drive Time in just 1 minute.